Eyes in the shadows. The watchers are always watching. It started with a phone call I shouldn't have answered. It was late on a Thursday evening, and I was sitting alone in my small apartment, the dim light of the TV flickering across the walls. The call came from an unknown number. Normally, I wouldn't have picked up, but something compelled me to that night. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was boredom. Either way, that decision changed everything. "Hello?" I said, my voice cautious. At first, there was silence on the other end. Then came a faint, almost imperceptible static, followed by a voice. It was low, gravelly, and spoke in a tone that made my skin crawl. "They're watching you," it said. Before I could respond, the line went dead. I sat there for a moment, the phone still pressed to my ear, my heart pounding in my chest. My first thought was that it had to be a prank, some bored kid trying to scare strangers. But as I put the phone down, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The voice had sounded too real, too deliberate. The rest of the evening passed uneventfully, though I couldn't focus on anything. I kept glancing at my phone, half expecting it to ring again. It didn't. Eventually, I convinced myself it was nothing and went to bed. But sleep didn't come easily. I kept hearing that voice in my head, those three words looping over and over. "They're watching you." The next morning, I woke up to find my phone buzzing on the nightstand. Another unknown number. I hesitated, my finger hovering over the answer button. Against my better judgment, I picked up. This time, the voice was different. It was higher pitched, almost childlike, but it carried the same unsettling tone. "Don't look outside," it said. Before I could respond, the line went dead again. A chill ran down my spine. I glanced toward the window, the curtains drawn tightly shut. The rational part of me told me it was still a prank, just someone trying to mess with me. But a darker part of me was starting to believe otherwise. I got up, made coffee, and tried to go about my day as usual. But the calls continued. Every few hours, my phone would buzz, and each time the message was more cryptic, more disturbing. "They know what you did. Don't go to work. It's too late now." By the time evening rolled around, I was a nervous wreck. I had no idea who was behind the calls or what they wanted. I thought about blocking the number, but something told me it wouldn't matter. Whoever it was would find another way to reach me. That night, I decided to stay up and wait for the next call. I wanted to confront them, to demand answers, but the call never came. Instead, as I sat there in the silence of my apartment, I heard a noise, a faint tapping sound, coming from the window. My blood ran cold. Slowly, I turned to look, but the curtains were still drawn. The tapping continued, rhythmic and deliberate. I wanted to get up and check, but my body wouldn't move. I was paralyzed with fear. Then just as suddenly as it had started, the tapping stopped. The silence that followed was deafening. I sat there for what felt like hours, too afraid to move. Eventually, exhaustion took over, and I fell asleep on the couch. The next morning, I woke up to find the curtains slightly open. Just a sliver, but enough to send my heart racing. I was sure I'd closed them tightly the night before. I checked the locks on the windows and doors, but everything was secure. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone had been there. Over the next few days, the calls stopped, but the strange occurrences didn't. Objects in my apartment seemed to move on their own. My keys, which I always left on the kitchen counter, would appear in the bathroom. Lights flickered inexplicably, and I started hearing whispers at night, faint but unmistakable. Desperate for answers, I decided to do some research. I combed through online forums and message boards, looking for anything that might explain what was happening. That's when I stumbled upon a thread about the Watchers. According to the thread, the Watchers were an urban legend, a group of entities that chose their victims at random. Once they targeted you, there was no escape. They would watch your every move, slowly driving you to madness. Some people claim to have seen them, shadowy figures with hollow eyes that appeared in the corners of rooms or just outside windows. Others said they never saw them but felt their presence, an oppressive weight that followed them everywhere. The more I read, the more convinced I became that this was what I was dealing with. The calls, the tapping, the whispers, it all fit. But the thread offered no solutions, only warnings. Don't acknowledge them. Don't try to fight them. Once they've chosen you, it's already too late. I tried to follow the advice. I ignored the strange noises, pretended not to notice when objects moved on their own. But it was impossible to ignore the feeling of being watched. It was constant, an oppressive presence that grew stronger with each passing day. One night I woke up to find a figure standing at the foot of my bed. It was tall and thin, its features obscured by shadow, but I could feel its eyes on me. I wanted to scream, to run, but I couldn't move. The figure didn't speak, didn't move. It just stood there watching. When I woke up the next morning, the figure was gone, but the fear lingered. I couldn't stay in the apartment any longer. I packed a bag and checked into a motel on the other side of town, hoping that distance would keep them away. For a while it seemed to work. The feeling of being watched faded, and I started to sleep through the night again. But then the calls started up again. The same unknown number, the same cryptic messages. You can't run. We're always watching. One night I returned to the motel to find the door to my room slightly ajar. My heart pounded as I pushed it open, half expecting to find someone inside. The room was empty, but on the bed was a single piece of paper with a message scrawled in jagged handwriting. You belong to us now. I left the motel that night and drove without a destination, too afraid to stop. I don't know how long I drove or how far I went. All I know is that I haven't been able to escape them. The watchers are always there, lurking just out of sight, waiting, and now no matter where I go, I can feel their eyes on me.